So I wrote a piece for the Dispatch that looked at the risk for gun rights advocates with Donald Trump that he may decide to, essentially pull a similar move that he did with pro-life advocates and moderate on the issue, very publicly come out and say that I think the ultimate goals of a lot of pro-life activists, at least, are not tenable and not politically viable to Donald Trump at this point. And so he's decided to, at least rhetorically during the campaign, it seems, change his position on, what his policy should be in regards to abortion. And, it's now not that Donald Trump is ever necessarily like a stalwart pro-lifer. He's taken different positions on the issue throughout his life, and even while he's been, officially in politics as a politician. But, if you look at his history with guns, you see a very similar pattern, right? And so let's start with him, and then I think maybe broaden from there, because Donald Trump is the leader of the one party, and we'll get more into this in a little bit, that actually seeks out gun voters and wants their support and values their votes at the polls. So let's start with him. Where do you see the same sort of risk that I'm talking about here with him maybe trying to tack to the center during the campaign on guns, or do you think he's a bit more committed in that area?
No, Trump doesn't believe in anything, of course, with the exception of he cares a great deal about trade policy. If you read his public statements and his various pronouncements about political issues and public issues going back to the 1980s, you'll find a pretty consistently hostile view of international trade. In the 80s, it was Japan. Now it's China. India will get their turn one of these days, I'm sure. Maybe Singapore if they start doing a little more manufacturing. But other than that, and he's also at this point really dug in on the issue of immigration. It would be difficult, I think, for him to change his tune on that issue very much without looking like he has done something unusually craven, even by his very low standards of cravenness. He doesn't care about the abortion issue. He doesn't really care about the gun issue. He has said things on both sides of both of those issues over the years. Sometimes during the same conversation, he will contradict himself. The worry on that, of course, is that someone will get in his ear and convince him that if he takes up a more restrictionist view of firearms, that it'll win him some votes in the suburbs and that'll get him over the line in November, or that they'll write nice things about him in the New York Times. And since he's on his way out, he's a lame duck his first day in office, he may want to be thought of as a kind of respected elder statesman once he leaves, which of course is preposterous and delusional, but that doesn't mean that's not what he's thinking. And there's also the issue that he apparently feels that he has been betrayed by the conservative legal movement, that he made all these commitments about judges and followed through when it came to the Supreme Court and appointed exactly the sort of people the Federalist Society wanted him to. And these people haven't done him any favors. Of course, what they've done is act consistently with their judicial philosophy and their understanding of the law. They've mostly apparently tried to do the right thing, but that's not how he views this stuff. Next time around, if there is a next time around, he probably will be less likely to be courting those sorts of lawyers, both for judicial appointments, but also for positions in the Justice Department and other positions in the federal government. He's going to want people who are more, more activist, more loyal, more sort of mafia type lawyers. His ideal lawyer, he always says, is Roy Cohn, and he's looking for people like that. And those folks, of course, can go either way on these issues. If the Trump administration, a second Trump administration, if one should come to pass, if it continues to appoint, originalist, textualist judges and to follow a kind of, Federalist Society legal strategy, that's going to be really good for the gun rights movement in the long term, because all the gun rights movement really needs to succeed in the legal, in the judicial realm anyway, is for the courts to do their jobs. The law is pretty clearly on their side in most places. Not to say there aren't statutory changes that need to be made. There are. The Constitution is pretty clearly on their side. And federal jurisprudence for some years now has been pretty clearly on their side. So without some radical change, the gun rights movement probably has pretty good reason to be confident, at least at the level of the Supreme Court and the very senior federal courts. But in terms of day-to-day policy, whether the administration is going to support, so-called assault weapons ban or an AR-15 ban or the things they've talked about, that's really going to be whichever way the wind blows. And Trump can be pretty specious about that stuff and pretty meretricious about that stuff and pretty unpredictable. And the other thing is that something Trump has in common with Joe Biden, I think, is that weirdly enough, for two guys who've both been elected president of the United States, neither one of them has particularly good political judgment. Biden right now allowing himself to be kind of bullied by these campus activists and treat our allies in Israel the way he has. I mean, never mind the right and wrong of the question, never mind the national interest of the question. It's just dumb politics. Trump might be someone who could be convinced that this would be a political winner for him, even though it probably wouldn't. And well-calculated, well-understood political self-interest is not going to save him from making bad decisions because he doesn't have well-calculated and well-understood political self-interest, I don't think.